is an open source project that we created to showcase the classes of vulnerability and the mapping and some of our threat intelligence that affects the particular threat actor and how we map threat actor back to the vulnerability, and hence show which threat actor could potentially target your organization by the direct or indirect. In this, but those were direct link because there is evidence that these exploits are exploited by ransomware. Now, if we go by Log4j, Log4j or 2144228 is a little bit more complex, so there are more classes of vulnerabilities mapped to it. One way is because this vulnerability was well studied, well analyzed, and hence there was a more granular approach on CWE. Take a note that normally CWE are not very well classified. So this is the full national vulnerability database that is documentation about all of this vulnerability, and only 50%, slightly more than 50% of vulnerability are actually classified to CWE, but not all of them are rightly classified. That's why we're reclassifying as well CWE with Phoenix Security. That is the result that you can see here by major category of vulnerability and with this vector analysis of vulnerability. Now, if we go back to the CWE, you can see that those CWE are classified by multiple CWE. So improper neutralization is of the, by the way, a little bit of a step back. So if we take this vulnerability, and I'm going to take a little bit of a step back, this vulnerability, Apache Log4j, was an injection attack that anybody could trigger with a specific string. I'm not going to go in detail. I'm not going to go in detail on describing the full vulnerability because that will take away the purpose of this video. And I'm going to have the link of the vulnerability if you want to see it here for the National Vulnerability Database. Again, this vulnerability was particularly targeted because it was easy to exploit with just a string, was widely distributed because Log4j is a library that is contained in a lot of software. And I'm going to touch on that in a second on the library side and why the library are so complex. But fundamentally, the attack complexity was low, there was no privilege required, and it was an attack based on a network perspective, as you can see here. So it was, you could launch the attack remotely with a remote code execution. Now, if you look at this, you will see a number of exploits or category of exploit: deserialization, improper neutralization, and exploit of sensitive information through queries. Now, what does that mean is you can reconnect that back to an injection attack, and then remote code execution could be driven through an injection attack. And as you can see here, all of these CWE then map to these major categories of vulnerabilities that you can reconnect to fundamentally a more simplified version of code execution or access control. And as you can see here, the vector analysis for these particular vulnerabilities is fairly more simplified. Again, arbitrary code execution